Hey everybody, so we're coming back to you again, making another video, and this one is kind of an update video and just kind of giving my thoughts on something, but it's also a video where I get to take a moment and I get to talk about something that it means a lot to me, something that I haven't talked about yet, and I was waiting for a moment to be able to talk about it, and it just hasn't been there. And going through a lot of what I've been going through these last couple days involving the Barrymore campaign and all the things that have came to light about his service and things like that. I was going about the internet and something came up that I read, something that was done just past Friday, a couple days ago, and I didn't know anything about it. And when I first saw it, I definitely said I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. But then I felt like it was a gut punch. I felt like it was a slap in the face. And something that I did, I took personally, as someone said in a post before. Getting ready to record this video. It's personal. And so I am going to tell this story now. But let me lead by reading what I read and what kind of made me want to make this video and finally tell my story. So today I ran across a post by U.S. Representative Barrymore's Facebook page. And it says, liberal cities have gotten away with harboring illegals due to their sanctuary city policies for too long. I agree. My legislation would require federal agencies to relocate existing offices from these liberal sanctuary cities to communities who respect our nation's laws. Okay. And then if you go in there, this was posted last Friday. It says, Washington, D.C. Today, Congressman Barrymore, Alabama 1st District, introduced the Terminating Infrastructure Maintenance and Expenditures for Obstructionist Urban Territories, the TIMEOUT Act. Legislation that would prohibit federal agencies from occupying, leasing, constructing, or maintaining federal office space in sanctuary jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement efforts. The TIMEOUT Act would require federal agencies to relocate existing offices and facilities from sanctuary jurisdictions to communities that comply with federal law and cooperate with federal immigration authorities. The legislation seeks to ensure taxpayer resources are directed toward communities that uphold the rule of law rather than jurisdictions that are actively hindering federal immigration enforcement. Sanctuary cities should not be rewarded for refusing to cooperate with federal law enforcement, said Rep. Moore. Communities that actively undermine federal immigration enforcement should not continue receiving the economic benefits associated with hosting federal facilities. My legislation ensures that federal resources are invested in communities that support law enforcement, uphold federal law, and prioritize the safety and security of the American people. I totally agree. Except the one thing that gets me, right, is he keeps identifying liberal cities and sanctuary cities. So I'm going to explain my story, okay, because it seems like explaining your story is okay, right? When it can be stories from people from California, when it's stories from people from Minnesota, when it's stories from people from Michigan, when it's stories from people from any other, New York, okay? When it's stories from those people, everybody wants you to hear them. Right? When in reality, this is a systemic issue. Why? Because it happened to me. It happened to me right here in Enterprise, Alabama, Coffee County, Alabama. right? Where you will see local authorities try to skirt around the fact that it's a federal problem, and they try to weasel around and use that term. Oh, that's a federal problem. We can't do anything. Federal problem. And so this is where I'm going to tell my story, and then I'm going to tell you where it ties into Mr. Moore, and why this article and this legislation, which I agree with, is a slap in my face and my family's face. And I'm going to explain that real quick as possible. So when I say that I was a victim, I guess you could say, I don't like the word victim, I just don't even like using it at times, of immigration crime and illegal immigrant crime at the time that it was done. And it was, I'll be honest with you, it was forgery. It was felony forgery. It was felony forgery of immigration documents. There's a much bigger backstory to it that I'm not going to go completely into, but it involved a lot of abuse of the system, and it caused a lot of harm to my children throughout the process of getting that all figured out. The price that was paid to my family was great. Just like you hear these stories of when families go through this, it comes at a great cost. A lot of times, all the way up to death. Thank God there was no deaths in my situation. Right? They're not all drunk driving accidents where somebody's drunk and they die, and it's easy to figure out. Sometimes it's fraud, and it's got to be investigated. It's got to be figured out. And in my case, it took a little bit. It took a little bit, and eventually, what I found out through an agent of the federal government is I was informed that some documents were turned in by an individual who was not legally in this country, and those forms supposedly had my signature on. That was after speaking to that individual for a period of time, and that individual started to ask me questions and then said, this is what happened. Inform me of what happened, asked me to provide signature proof. I did so. Then that individual told me, we have a problem. These are the steps you need to take. And then you need to call Department of Homeland Security and talk to immigration enforcement. And this is exactly what you do. Now, I have that phone call recorded with that individual. And why did I have it recorded? For the same reason that earlier in the stories, what was happening. It ended up being a whole ordeal before I even find this out. And it happens to have my children being left with this individual for a period of time. It was just a really crazy situation. And during that time frame, I was informed by another government official to start recording everything, to start recording phone calls, to start recording interactions, inform me that Alabama was a one-party state, things like that. So that's what I started doing. And so by the time I have a phone call with this immigration attorney, I am already recording everything. So she informs me of this document that was turned in by this individual. When she looks at my signatures, which she asked me to do and confirm to her, she informs me we have an issue, and I'm going to need you to contact Department of Homeland Security. I do that. Then that actual federal agent that I'm speaking to, she starts to inform me that this is the most common form of immigration fraud, that a lot of people aren't able to catch it on time, and things like that. And because I tell her everything that I have, what was going on, and that agent Department of Homeland Security then tells me, we're going to investigate this. In the meantime, you go to your local authorities and you explain to them what has happened. And so I do that, and that's when kind of all hell breaks loose in my life. And in the beginning, there was not much hesitancy to look into it, to investigate it, to look at the evidence, the phone calls. And at that time, they were actually writing out a police report, which I still have, where they talk about having went over this evidence and things like that, and having it in their possession, and telling me to go get a warrant for it. And because again, I provided phone call recordings from an immigration attorney and a phone call with Department of Homeland Security. And so I provided this as well as all the other documents and stuff, and the proof that that they were investigating the individual in question. And so I go to get a warrant at the county level, and that's when it all kind of falls apart. We go from a warrant to a summons, and then it just falls off the map. There's no talk. They keep telling me in the DA's office, at Coffee County DA's office, that they had no evidence packet and they couldn't take it in front of grand jury without an evidence packet. So I'm going back and forth between the police department and the Coffee County DA's office, and one's telling me they don't have the packet. The other agency is telling me that they've already turned the packet in. And so this is several instances, and I have each one of these recorded as well. All the way to the point that I call the DA's office right there at the desk in the police station, and they literally tell me on the phone in front of the police that they haven't had it. And it was told to me that it was walked over personally, taken over personally by the detective, the lead detective in the department. So not only that, but I can also tell you that during the actual process, so we actually get to a point where this starts going through the preliminary processes and everything like that. And through the first two processes, I can tell you that there was no evidence packet given. There was no evidence packet given, that I had provided all these documents. And it gets pushed forward to grand jury only on my testimony, because I said I had this evidence. And it got moved forward to grand jury. And lo and behold, I have a very brief coming in and questioning during that process. Don't really know how much I can talk about that, so I'm not going to get too far into it. But what I am going to say is that case was dismissed. And my biggest problem is I find it hard to believe that with the evidence that I had provided, and at that point in the process, there was also already a removal order for this individual. Department of Homeland Security had investigated the problem and investigated my claims themselves, because I had actually filed that with the fraud department with ICE. And they had already investigated that and said, hey, this is getting withdrawn. We investigated your case, and you have a certain period of time to leave the United States of America, or we'll have to come looking for you. And so I had already provided this as well. So plenty of evidence to show, not to mention again that there was the recording with the immigration attorney where they clearly stated this person turned these documents into me. I mean, that's just about pretty cut and dry, unless somebody signed some things and handed it to you, and then you turned it in to somebody that was very important without reviewing them. That just wouldn't be very smart. But this is the type of evidence that was turned in to everyone. And nothing. Pardon me. And nothing. And even with all that evidence, no indictment was able to be found with the grand jury. So I'm not saying it happened. I'm not saying it happened. But considering the fact that the evidence packet wasn't turned in the first two parts of the process, I'm not sure if I believe that during the third stage of that process, which was the grand jury, and the evidence that I said that I had and that I had turned over to the DA's office, I find it hard to believe that it didn't make it into the other two processes and it made it into the last one. I'm not saying it didn't. I don't know that. But it's hard for me to believe that it made it in there and it didn't get an indictment. I know that for sure. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a prosecutor. But anybody with that kind of evidence would have got an indictment from a grand jury. I can promise you that. I got the receipts. I still have everything. So after me turning all that stuff in, there was quite a bit of reprisal. There was quite a bit of retaliation, and these things are real. When I tell you, I didn't go talk to anyone unless I was recording. I didn't. For this day. So when I talk about it, I have it. Okay? We will take my evidence up against your denials, and I'll take that fight any day. Because I know what I have. So there was a lot of reprisal. There was a lot of retaliation that was coming my way. Children paying for it throughout this entire process. Because nobody wanted to do their job, right, when it came to being law enforcement and when it came to dealing with immigration. Because the things I was hearing, right, was that's a federal problem. We can't get involved. Right? The same things that Barry Moore is talking about that these liberal cities do. The same thing. They figure out how to weasel around having to have these people prosecuted because they might have to get deported. And we can't have that, right? What do y'all call them? Bleeding heart liberals? But Enterprise, Alabama is supposed to be a conservative area. It's Barry land, right? It's Barry Moore land, the most conservative person in Congress, the most conservative person that stepped into Washington, D.C. You cannot tell me, right, that that's happening in his backyard. So knowing what Mr. Moore says about deporting illegal immigrants, and trust me, please understand, it wasn't about that. And it gets very interesting that I talk about that, but it wasn't about that. I'm just talking about what he talks about. It's all over his stuff. Okay, he supports deportation. He supports holding illegal immigrants responsible for their crimes. This is all over his stuff. America first. So I said to myself, I need to write a congressional. Being a veteran, a service member, I don't know why I didn't think of that long time before. And so I write a congressional. I write to Barry Moore's office. I explain the entire situation exactly, pretty much how I explained it to you. And that went to Constituent Services, this Shannon Smith. So she contacts me back and she says, oh, we can't get involved unless it's involving an open case and a federal agency. And I said, it is an open case. Gave her certain documentation. She contacted DHS, contacts me back and says, hey, they say that this individual is on their radar, but so is many others, to try to stay patient, and that that this person was in violation of the negative order and or negative decision and things like this. It was all in the congressional communication. And so at that point, I'm thinking, wow, okay, this is more evidence. So I take it back to different authorities, and they tell me, do this, do this, do this. Well, I get a contact back from Mr. Moore's office where she explains to me there was a mistake. I was talking about someone else. It was very nonchalant. That's not a small mistake. That's not a small mistake. And she kind of just blew it off like it was nonchalant. And she told me that person, you know, was here legally. I didn't understand how that was happening, considering I had a letter that said that individual had to leave, and that there was no appeal process to that. But when a congressman's office contacts you and says these things, you just let it go. So I let that go. I don't know anything about it after that. And but the problem is these individuals continue to get to commit crimes. What I did find out, and this was because of another veteran out here in Coffee County, had to deal with, surprisingly, another family member of this said person. And there was a false report made against another veteran out here in Coffee County by that individual. And they had put out a warrant for this person, for this veteran. And when this person brought all the paperwork to the police department to say, you know, this is a false report, here is the evidence, that officer contacted Coffee County Sheriff's Department, and they said, you know, you got to arrest him. You got to arrest him. Even though he had a judge's order, right, from another jurisdiction, exonerating him from even the possibility of it being a crime. And they were still going to arrest this gentleman. And no record of an honorably discharged veteran. And so... And these all these instances that I'm talking about, they're all recorded. So that officer telling me he contacted the Blue Top and talked to the sheriff's department, said, no, you still got to arrest that guy, right? And this is on a report from a foreign national against a veteran. Same family that I'm dealing with. And so that guy, they let him leave that evening, right? And then he goes to an attorney, and that attorney takes the same documents, charges him $5,000, takes the same documents, and takes them to the court, and they let him go. Now, thank you to the attorney for letting him have his money back, but it started feeling like an old Mexican shakedown. You hear the stories about Mexico, and about if you pay us this much money, we ain't gonna arrest you, or we'll let you out of jail. That's what it felt like. So when that gentleman got the warrant dropped, right, because it was obvious that there was no crime committed and that this person had filed a false report, okay, foreign national. They do the report, they do all that, right? They file for the warrant. Nobody's looking for them. Nobody's doing anything. So we got, who was at the time an illegal immigrant, filing false allegations, false claims, forgery at the federal level, because those are federal documents that were forged and turned in. Okay, we've got another individual right here, same county, Coffee County, filing false reports on other veterans. And when they get caught, nothing happens. I mean, these are the facts. I have the receipts. I have the videos. I don't mind saying where this is happening. So once this starts happening to that veteran, I get back in contact with Barry Moore's office. I actually see him, I think, at the Lions Club. They come up there. Shannon comes up there and talks to people. So I go up there again and I talk to her again and I said, look, this is still happening. This is still happening. You've got to be able to help us. You've got to be able to help us. This is all you talk about. This is all your guy campaigns about. Illegal immigration, immigrant crime. Which, by the way, I come to find out, yeah, that person is here legally at this point. Got somewhat legal status when? On the last day of the Joe Biden administration. Right? How did I find that out? Because documents were spread all out in this false report that was made to the police. So yeah, legal now since the last day of the Biden administration, which sounds legit. But what did you say to me? There's nothing I can do. There's nothing he can do for you. Right? That's what was said. There's nothing Mr. Moore can do for you. There's nothing more we can do for you. So just like they're talking about in that legislation, cities, localities, okay, local governments that shield immigrants, foreign nationals, illegal immigrants from being prosecuted for crimes. That's what he's talking about right there in that legislation, which I totally agree with. That should not be happening. We shouldn't have a protected class at all in this country. I agreed with that before it happened to me. I agree with it now. Barry Moore himself said, experience is the best teacher. I could have co-authored that legislation with you, Mr. Moore, because I have experience in it. My family paid the price. And because nothing was still done, what I'm trying to explain to you now, my family is still paying the price. There are other veterans in the area that are still paying the price, and nothing's being done. And to tell me that a sitting member of Congress can't do anything in his district, in his own district, he gets up and he talks about other states, about other cities, right? He puts up videos of other victims, the names. But when it came down to what was happening in his own backyard, there was nothing he could do. Is that a valid excuse for the mayor of Chicago? Is that a valid excuse for the mayor of New York? I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Why is it okay for a sitting member of Congress, a congressman, why is it okay for a congressman to say, there's nothing I can do for you while these immigrants commit crimes against you? And it's not okay for a simple mayor to do so. Which, again, I don't agree with. We should not have protected classes. If people break laws, they should be prosecuted. If being prosecuted causes people to be deported, that's not on the people they committed crimes against. That's like telling a rape victim, oh, I'm sorry, we can't prosecute that person because it would be like retaliating against them. So that is when I changed my vote from Barry Moore to whoever was going to run against him. Is it personal? Sure. Sure, everyone votes for reasons that are personal. Is it dually personal to me? Absolutely. Absolutely, because I lived through it. Right? And so part of me thinks to myself, hey, maybe he doesn't know. So I go to a campaign stop, and again, I record it because I recorded all of it for years. For years and years, I've recorded all of it. Every conversation. I won't say I recorded in almost 100% of the time. I made sure I was recorded in places that were legal to record. Because people like to lie. So, during this campaign, there was a stop at the country club right here in Enterprise, Alabama, and the Republican women of Coffee County were putting this on, and so I made it in. I talked to Mr. Hudson about what happened to me and my family. I asked him, what kind of things would be, what he would do to attack that kind of situation as a senator, as a representative of the state of Alabama and the constituents in it. He gave me his answer, and I was very pleased with his response. It was what I would expect me to do. Okay, I'm not going to be a sitting member of Congress. I'm not going to run my mouth about something that I believe in, and then when I'm presented an opportunity to fight against that, I'm going to do it. And especially if it's happening with the people that I know. If it's my district or if it's the people that I know, number one, I'm going to really come at that. Because you should know better, right? You know what I run on. This is my district. What are you doing? Right, of course. But don't tell me you can't do nothing. So I went to the man himself. Next, I spoke to Barry Moore. I told Mr. Moore exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. Exactly what I just said to you. And this whole interaction is recorded. And what did the man say? I'll tell you what he said. He said, I would have killed everybody involved. Because there was sexual abuse involved with someone in my family. So this led to got to a very bad level when it came to affecting my family. And when I explained to him all this, he said, I would have killed everybody. But you know what happened when I told him, well, that was right here in Coffee County. That was right here with the sheriff's department. Do you know what happened? Not a get with me, I'll see what I can do for you. Not a listen, I'll do a speech for you. Nothing. A little guy grabbed him, whisked him away. So from constituent services, he can't do anything. From Mr. Moore himself, I'd kill everyone until he found out it was his own people. And he invited the sheriff that's allowing it to the State of the Union to talk about what? Thankful that he can do more about immigration crime. When he's got veterans in his own town, in his own county, who are struggling against immigrant crime and nothing's being done. Are they contacting the federal authorities? Like, I'm pretty sure there's some Alabama legislation in, right, where it says, at this point, where it says, I could be wrong. Are you going to come down on them? Just like you want to come down on liberal cities, because this is proof that this is not a liberal city problem. This is a systemic problem. And you're talking like you can do something for the people, and when it came to your yard, see, you got an excuse when you talk about Minnesota and you talk about California, you talk about New York, talk about Michigan, you got an excuse, right? Because you're representative of Alabama, the constituents of Alabama. Well, it got dropped on your doorstep and you fumbled the ball again. And then you write legislation like this? Like you haven't seen the same thing right here and you did nothing? You said you could do nothing, but you expect more out of mayors? You expect more out of city council members? But you couldn't do anything. It's still happening. And nothing. So yeah, it's a problem. And it's systemic. It's right here. What are you going to do? I'm not afraid to talk about it anymore. At this point, you've done about the worst you could do. You can't do much more. You can't take much more from me. You praise God that you weren't able to get me on no kind of charges. Absolutely everything has been dismissed. But there's still people out there that have swore to the U.S. government they do everything to be a model citizen. But how do you know if they're being a model citizen if they're not being prosecuted for crimes? So it's awesome to, like I said, it's awesome to cast a vote, and it's awesome to be able to write legislation. But leadership isn't about that. Anyone can do that. Like I just said, I agree with your legislation. It's awesome. I could have co-authored it. I could have probably wrote something better because I lived it. That doesn't matter. When you're faced with adversity, when you're faced with a hard decision, how you deal with that, it shows your leadership. And when the same thing he was asking of these liberal cities, which is cities all over America, liberal cities, conservative cities, all over it's happening. But when it came to his backyard, he could do nothing. He said his hands were tied. He can do nothing. And I'm going to claim that because I have those receipts. Don't I, Miss Smith? I do. And so we're going to leave that at that. You couldn't do it. You couldn't stomp me out. But the fact is, the 100% fact is that it happens everywhere. And it happened in Barry Moore's backyard, and he said he was helpless. He said he can't do anything. But he can write that legislation. Hold your own people accountable. There's a whole lot of talk. There's a whole lot of talk. People say they will run on this stuff, right? They will talk about it. But when the rubber hits the road, they don't do anything. We deserve better. We don't deserve to have someone who is going to talk the talk, but when it's time to walk the walk, do nothing. That is the same old junk. You run your yap and you don't produce. This was your shining shot to say, this is how much it matters to me. This is my own district, and look how I'm going to handle business. But you can do nothing? Sitting congressman, you can do nothing? I know that's why I'm voting for Jared Hudson. And it is personal. God bless you. God bless our veterans. Love you.